What's up, Fuse? What's up, Fuse? Let's give it up for the band one more time for leading us in worship tonight. Give it up for that band, man. We are just so blessed to have worship like that, to be able to show God our appreciation and our gratitude. And I got to give a shout out to all of these students who are sharing in between those times. I mean, can we give it up for them saying yes? Like, I'll tell you from our perspective and your leaders' perspectives, to have students who are stepping into these opportunities with so much passion and so much fire, like that is exactly why we do what we do here. Because this ministry, it's for y'all. This is y'all's. This is y'all's. We want to create the environment. We want to create the opportunity for you. But at the end of the day, Fuse is y'all's. And so it takes you guys. In order to have a Wednesday night, in order to bring in new people, to grow God's kingdom, it takes all of us together. So just know that as we continue in this season and go into Fuse Camp and all these different things, that it takes all of us together, and how special it is what we have here at Fuse. Without any further ado, can we jump into Samson Part 2? Who was here last week for Samson Part 1? Raise your hand real quick. Who can tell me 1 point from last week's message? Anybody got anyone? Accept the unexpected. Gold star. Gold star. That was good. That was good. Okay. Got the notes up. I saw that. I like it, though. I like you got the notes. That's good. That's good. Yes, we talked about how we have to accept the unexpected. We have to trust God with the unexpected, and that God's presence in our lives is what gets us through unexpected seasons. And we talked about this guy named Samson, and Samson was this super strong, brave, courageous, faithful dude in the Bible, in the book of Judges. And this week, in our last week of old school, going through this series, we're going to look at how Samson may have faced unexpected things last week in the beginning of his story, but tonight we're going to see not so much the unexpected, but the consequences of his choices in his life. And I think sometimes we try to say the consequences of our choices were unexpected, when in reality, right, if we look at the choices we made and then the things that happened, maybe it wasn't so unexpected, right? Maybe we started walking down a road that we didn't necessarily want to get to the end of. And so as we go through tonight's message, looking at part 2 of Samson, that's the kind of the difference we're going to see through his story. Tonight's title is called Don't Let It Break You. Don't let it break you. I want to ask, is there any moments in your life where you almost broke, where you are pushed to your limits, where you feel like you can't give any more, you can't do anything more? Like, you ever had a really hard workout that's like you're huffing and puffing, right? Like, you're at the end. Like, I know there's like a Ranger Maker out there. There's other things like that. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Like, y'all got those in your schools where like you're pushed to the brink, right? Like, I had a trainer one time, and he was like, I want you to work out like your mom's life depends on it. And I was like, man, I'm just doing some curls, man. Like, can you relax? Like, can you calm down, brother? Calm down. You know, it's like sometimes it's a little too intense. But I know we've all been pushed physically, maybe in some of those ways, and maybe it's more mentally, right? Like, you ever have like a argument with like a super stubborn friend? Who in here has a stubborn friend? Me too. I am the stubborn friend. You ask Nolan, that poor guy has to deal with a lot. He has to deal with a lot. You ever been arguing with that friend and like, you know they're wrong. Like, you already looked it up. You have the facts up on the phone, and like, you can show them they were wrong. And yet they still, right? What do? They keep arguing, right? They're like, no, that's a bad link. That's the wrong article. You don't know who wrote that. He's not credible. It's like all these things, right? Now, don't point to who it is, but just give me a little bit of this. Somebody was like, yeah. But yeah, we all have friends like that. Or maybe you know, you're playing Fortnite one day and you get boxed in the final fight, you know, and you get, 120 to the dome and you're dead, you know. And I heard some stories about some kids punching some monitors and like losing it over a video game, you know. And I'm not gonna lie, I've spiked a controller or two in my day, okay? I get it. It's not okay. But I understand it, you know. Sometimes these little things in our life push us, and then they break us sometimes. And, you know, some of these things that break us are a little silly, like a video game, whatever, but some other things in our lives are more serious. We go through seasons of our lives where it feels like we're going to break. It feels like if one more thing happens, we're going to break. And so tonight, we're going to look at what do we do when life does break us? What do we do when things don't go the way we thought? And to set up this story today, to set up the Bible story we're going through today, I'm going to do some storytelling, all right? So I need you guys, everybody, to stay with me as I go through this little storytelling portion. So we all know that Samson married someone, right, in last week's message, right? Married a person that was a part of the enemies, the Philistines, Pharisees, New Testament. We'll get there at some point, don't worry. Philistines is current, the oppressors of Israel. Everybody remember the cycle we've talked about throughout this series of Judges, right? They cry out, God raises up a deliverer, and then they sin against God, they disobey God, and then they fall back into oppression. So they go through this cycle. And so again, we see this cycle with Samson. And this time, Samson decides he's gonna marry a woman who is a part of the oppressors, a part of the Philistines. And actually what turns out, and this is just a side in the story, she actually dies, okay? And so now Samson's single again, all right? So now Samson finds another woman named Delilah. Everybody say Delilah. Now everybody say Delilah. Give me that mean mug, Delilah. Oh no. Delilah is not good news, okay? Delilah is not good news. He meets this woman named Delilah, and the Philistines come to Delilah, right? And we all remember who Philistines are, correct? So the Philistines come to Delilah and they say, listen, if you can tell us, if you can get him to lose that strength that he has, we're gonna pay you some money, all right? And she agrees to this deal. And so now Samson's in love with someone who has it out for him. Samson's in love with someone who's trying to hurt him. Samson is in love with someone who's trying to take away his strength. And so what happens as we watch is that she asks him, she says, hey, we're getting pretty close now, We've been talking for a few months. We have a streak, so I think it's about time you told me, how do you have your strength? What's the source of your strength? And Samson was something called a Nazirite. Everybody say Nazirite. And when you're a Nazirite, you take a vow at the beginning of your life where you can't touch dead things, you can't drink alcohol, and you can't cut your hair. And so the hair was a representation of Samson's vow to God to be the deliverer of Israel. And so what we see is that his hair, right? People see that hair, they know that that is a Nazirite who is representing the deliverer of Israel. And so we know right now, right? We know that the source of the strength, right, is the hair. It's the hair. But what he tells her is different things. He tells her some lies. Because Samson, he plays around too much. You got a friend that plays too much? This guy is that guy, all right? So she asked him, right? She asked him. And he tells her, like, if you tie my hands and my feet with these special kind of strings, then I'll lose my strength, okay? Then he wakes up the next morning, and sure enough, that stuff is tied around his hands and his feet. And then he breaks out of it, and then you would think what, right? He knows that he told her that, and then it happened. So who's the only one that he told? Delilah, right? So you would think, right? What should he do? What should he do? Dump her, right? Dump her. Listen, there's gonna be some wrong people in your life, okay? And sometimes you gotta dump them. All right? You gotta dump them. You gotta dump them. All right? So what continues to happen is that he stays with her. He stays with this girl. Boys, if a girl does that, what do? Dump her, bro. Run. That's the wrong woman, all right? That's the wrong lady, not the one, all right? But he stays with her. And she asks him again. She's like, come on. Like, you lied to me. She's like trying to gaslight him. Like, you lied to me, so tell me the truth. And he's like, what? So he tells her another lie. He said, if you get ropes this time and tie it, I'll lose my strength. Sure enough, the next morning, he wakes up, ropes, feet and hands. And it's like, bro, Samson, dog, wake up, right? Wake up, right? But again, he stays with her. So she goes to him again. She said, how dare you lie to me? How dare you lie to me? Tell me the truth. So he says, this time, if you braid my hair in a certain way, I'll wake up with no strength. So now he's getting closer, right? He's getting closer this time. The other times it was ropes and strings, but this time it has to do with his hair. It may not be cutting his hair, but this time it's getting closer. Some of us, we get closer, don't we? We get closer. We started out over here just playing around, but now Now we're getting closer to that thing. And so he wakes up again with a braid in his hair. He takes it out, and this time she loses it. And this is what she says. This is what we're going to pick up in Judges 16. She says, how can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? Oh, man. Gaslighting, right? That is manipulative, man. If anybody says that to you, I don't know. I just can't. I might give you a look or something, because like if somebody's saying that to you and you're still with them, like that is dangerous. Like if you love me, you will. I would not be with someone who says things like that. And if you are someone who says things like that, maybe we have something learning to do, all right? Maybe we have some learning to do. She says, you have mocked me these 3 times, and you have not told me where your great strength lies. And when she pressed him hard with her words day after day and urged him, his soul was vexed to death. And he told her all his heart. And he said to her, a razor has never come upon my head, for I have been a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. If my head is shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak like any other man. And Delilah knew something was different about this time. She picked up on his tone and the way he was honest and the way he gave her heart, his heart to her. So she went to the Philistines and said, this time I know, come up again, he has given me his heart. Samson now is betrayed, and I think we all have experienced betrayal at some point in our lives. And so the first point of tonight is be careful who you give your heart to. Be careful who you give your heart to. Students, in today's world, there will be many things after your heart. There will be many people after your heart. And some people, I hate to tell you, are not looking out for what's best for you. Some people want what's best for them. And so when they come to you and they want your heart real bad, but they may not be ready to take care of your heart. They may not be the one that actually wants to take care of your heart. And I think some of us, we get so caught up in maybe being alone or being single or whatever it is that we kind of just give our hearts out to anybody who will take it. And the problem is with that is that we will continually face a broken heart because we're not careful about who we give our heart to. And so if you find yourself in a season where you keep having that breakup, you keep going through that same struggle, are you being careful with who you're giving your heart to? And that's not just dating, that's friendships too. The people you surround yourself, are they people who are pushing you towards the right things, people who are looking out for your best interest? Or are they the people that says, come out one more night. Come out one more night. Have one more. Can't be that bad. Are they people that continue pushing you towards all the bad things? Are they people who are continually putting you in bad situations? Because I think we look at Samson's story, we say, Samson, why would you stay with her, right? She's crazy. But then if the magnifying glass was turned to your life, would there be that thing that you keep going to? Would there be that person you keep returning to? Would there be that friend group you keep going back to? Now, I know it's hard to be alone. But I'm telling you, you would rather be alone with God than with a bunch of people who don't have your heart in mind. And so as we continue through this story, just have that in your mind. Because sometimes when people show you who they are, you just have to believe them. You just have to believe them. I'm not saying you have to, say they're gone forever, never my friend again, they'll never be good, they'll always be a bad person, I'm gonna hate them. No, I'm not saying do that. But sometimes when people show you who they are, you just have to believe them. You have to say to yourself, okay, that person needs to be at arm's distance. That person needs to have some boundaries in my life. Because if you don't, if you continue to expect them to change, aren't you setting yourself up for disaster? And what happens is you start holding them to a standard that you already know they can't meet. So now not only are you hurting yourself, you're hurting them. You see how it doesn't work? And so I think we have to be more careful about who we're letting in. We have to be more careful about what we are letting in. And I would encourage you, a good rule of thumb is to trust what people show you, not what they tell you. Trust what they show you through their actions, how they love you, how they encourage you, how they support you, how they celebrate you. If you can see it, if you can see their support, you can see how they love God. They go to church consistently. They're there. They're a part of it. They're good. You know, they're honest. They don't lie for no reason. They don't gossip. Like these kind of things is what we have to start looking at, and look at what they're showing us, not what they're telling us. Because Delilah keeps telling Samson, "No, we love each other. Just tell me, you know, the secret to your strength, so I can, you know, basically kill you. You know." And it's like, but if he looked at what she was showing him, right? What would we tell him? Dump her, girl. Dump him, girl. Come on. And so I think we have to start being more careful about who we give our heart to. So what happens next? After he tells her, she shaves his head and he wakes up. And it says that she made him helpless and that his strength left him. And this time when she told him the Philistines were here, he says, "I will escape as I did before and shake myself free." But he did not know that the Lord had left him. He did not know the Lord had left him. You know, this verse breaks my heart every time I read it because he's helpless and yet doesn't even know it. Like he's had this superhuman strength his whole life. He's never known a day without this strength a part of him, a part of his life. And so when he wakes up, he expects it to be the same as it's always been, and yet he wakes up this time not knowing it's gone. Have you ever lost something? You ever lost something you thought you could never lose? You ever lost something that you thought would never change? It's hard to wake up that first day. Samson woke up and didn't even know the Lord was not with him anymore because the vow was broken. The strength was gone. And I empathize and I can feel for Samson here. Because I think there's times in our Christianity where we choose the wrong things throughout our week and throughout our year and throughout our month. And yet sometimes we wake up and we're confused why we don't feel the presence of God in our lives. And sure, maybe you've been going to church, but have you been living this life on the weekends? Are you living this life at school? And I think sometimes we get surprised when God's not with us, but we haven't been walking with him. Samson wakes up not knowing, but yet we can look at Samson's choices, right, up to that point. And we can say, well, Samson, of course. Samson, it was always going to happen. Look how she treated you. Look at what situations you were putting yourself in, Samson. And then it says that the Philistines seized him and they gouged out his eyes. They took his eyes. And they brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze shackles. And he was forced to grind grain in the prison. So Samson was betrayed, and now Samson's blind. And the point here is that no one is invincible. No one is invincible. We talked about it last week, how the unexpected happens, and I want to make a clear difference here. The unexpected are things that are out of our control, while rock bottom that we see Samson in here is often a result of the choices we make. And again, I think sometimes we get down a road. We keep putting ourselves in a bad situation. We keep allowing ourselves to have no boundaries. We keep allowing ourselves to surround our lives the wrong people. And then something bad happens. And I think we can't call that unexpected. We have to call that the consequence of the choices that we make. And I'm not here to put you down or to discourage you, but I think we do need to sometimes take some ownership for how we got to some of these places. We can't keep saying they did it to us, or it was their fault, or I'm here because of what they did or how they treat. Sometimes it's on you. And if you can start taking ownership and responsibility for the mistakes you made, it doesn't mean that you're any less. It just means that you understand how you got to where you got. And when you understand how you get to where you get, you can know how to get out. And so Samson here lost his eyes. He's seized and shackled. The first time he's ever been shackled for a long amount of time, because every other time he's been able to break out, but this time he's trapped. And it says they have him grinding grain. And this was to humiliate him. This was to show that he is no longer the strong man. He's the weak man now. He's the weakest. He's the lowest of the low. From the highest of the high. The strongest of the strong. And now he's at the bottom. Grinding grain in a prison cell. Shackled to the floor. None of us are invincible. This guy was the peak of strength. And yet where do we find him? See, sometimes I think we allow our pride to get in the way and we say, well, it could never happen to us. It'll never happen to me. I'm smart. I'm smart. Like those teenagers I know, people think, but I'm going to figure it out. And I'm not saying some of you aren't smart people, but I would say if you look at the choices you keep making, the places you're slowly, tiptoeing towards, I would say don't be surprised when it does happen to you. And we see that he's now blind and betrayed. He's lost it all. Stumbling around in the dark, both physically and spiritually. He's lost God. He's lost it all. And I don't know if any of you tonight can relate to that feeling, or you walked in here with that going on in your heart, in your life. But I'll tell you, this is not the end of Samson's story. This is not the end of Samson's story. If we look at the next verse, it says, but his hair began to grow back after it had been shaved. What was the source of his strength? His hair. And what was growing back? His hair. I'm telling you, if you feel like you're at the rock bottom tonight, if things have been related to Samson, if you can relate to Samson's story and you find yourself, you're lost, you don't know where to go, you don't know where to turn to next, you're grinding grain in the prison, I'm telling you, we have a God that can grow it back. And so if you would be willing to turn to him, man, get ready for your grow back season. Get ready for the comeback. Because we're about to see that Samson completes one of the greatest comebacks of all time. It says that they brought him out before everyone so they could laugh at him and spit on him. And he cries out, Lord God, please remember me, strengthen me just once more. And it says that he pushes against the pillars of the temple he is in and they crumble. And it says that he says, let me die with the Philistines. And he pushes with all his might and the temple falls on the leaders and the people. And he did more on his last day than all his other days combined. He did what he was born to do on his last day because his grow back season had started. See, we have a God that has so much grace that no matter how far you went, no matter how low you got, no matter if it was all your choices that were against his Bible, no matter if it was all his choices that were against what he wants for your life, if you would be willing to turn to him, the grow back season is on the way. Because at the end of the day, Samson was blind and betrayed. But he wasn't broken. But he wasn't broken. How easy would it have been for him to say, God, I'm grinding grain in the prison. I've lost everything. God, I'm never coming back to you. Look where you got me, God. But instead, in his most desperate moment, what does he say? Lord God, please remember me. Strengthen me, God, just once more. See, as Christians, we may go through seasons of betrayal. We may make some mistakes and end up blind. But we can't break. We can't be broken. We have to be willing to turn back to God in those lowest moments. So tonight, students, don't let it break you. Don't let it break you. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what you're experiencing. Some of you would never talk about what you're really going through. You sit on the front or the back row or somewhere in between, and you would never say what's really going on. But we all know there is something. And so whether you want to share it or not in small groups or with your leader or with anybody else in your life, just let me encourage you and speak to you directly tonight. Don't let it break you. Because God's grace is greater. God's grace can grow, and God's grace makes a way. Let's pray. God, thank you for allowing us to learn more about you. God, to grow closer to you. God, thank you for giving us a space to worship with one another, to have a community, to not be alone in our struggles, to not be alone in our mistakes, to not be alone in our grinding grain seasons, to not be alone at our rock bottom, God, but to have people here that love us. So God, I pray for the student tonight that's in here thinking there's no one that wants the best for them, thinking there's no one that cares about their heart. And God, I pray that they know that the person to their left and to their right and their leaders are here to love them, to support them, to speak wisdom and godliness into them, God. God, I pray for any of us who are facing these moments of brokenness. God, that they would just realize that there's this peace that we talked about in that song earlier. There's this love that we speak about. There's this grace that covers all of their guilt. God, I pray they would turn to you tonight and realize it doesn't have to end in the prison. It doesn't have to end at the lowest point, God. But God, a new beginning can start with you. So God, as we worship this next song, God, I pray these students worship with all they have, knowing how good and how graceful you are. Let's worship.